When compassion costs everything, a surgeon was fired after saving a poor child's life, but the truth was even more disturbing. The fluorescent lights of St. Bridget's private hospital hummed faintly above Dr. Wayne Carter as he leaned over the operating table, his hands steady despite the exhaustion tugging at his body. His 12-hour shift was nearly over, but the ER was unusually chaotic that evening. A car crash on the interstate had sent a flurry of patients their way, and Wayne was one of the last surgeons still available. Dr. Carter, a nurse called from the doorway, her voice trembling. "You need to see this." Wayne turned, wiping his hands on his scrubs. The look on the nurse's face told him it wasn't good. He followed her down the hallway, weaving through the crowd of bustling staff, the scent of antiseptic thick in the air. In the triage room, a young boy lay unconscious on a gurney, his face pale and smeared with blood. His legs were twisted unnaturally, and the monitors beeped erratically, signaling a fight for survival. "What's his status?" Wayne asked, stepping closer. He crouched beside the boy, placing a hand gently on his chest. "Severe internal bleeding. Possible collapsed lung." The paramedic said he was hit by a car while chasing a soccer ball into the street. The nurse hesitated before continuing. "His parents are here, but they said they don't have insurance." Wayne stiffened, a pang of anger and sorrow tightening his chest. "That doesn't matter. Prep him for surgery." The nurse hesitated. Dr. Carter, the admin office, already flagged his case. "They said." "I don't care what they said," Wayne snapped, his green eyes blazing. "This kid is dying. Either help me save him, or get out of my way." The nurse nodded, her own moral conflict visible in the quick glance she cast toward the doorway. Wayne knew the risks of going against hospital policy, especially at a place like St. Bridget's, where profits often came before patients. But he wasn't about to stand by and let a child die over paperwork. As the team wheeled the boy into the operating room, Wayne felt a bead of sweat slide down his temple. Every second counted, and he needed to stay focused. "Scalpel," he said, his voice firm. The nurse handed him the instrument, her hands trembling slightly. "BP dropping," another nurse announced. "He's losing too much blood." "Not on my watch," Wayne muttered. He worked quickly, the steady rhythm of the machines a reminder of just how close they were to losing him. After what felt like hours but was only 40 minutes, the boy's condition stabilized. Wayne exhaled deeply, pulling off his gloves as he stepped back from the table. "He's stable for now," he said, his voice tinged with relief. "Good work, everyone." But his relief was short-lived. As he stepped out of the operating room, a figure blocked his path. It was Dr. Margaret Fields, the head of hospital administration. Her arms were crossed, her sharp features twisted into a frown. "Dr. Carter," she said coldly. "My office." "No." In the sterile confines of the administrator's office, Wayne sat across from Dr. Fields, his jaw clenched. The silence stretched, thick and oppressive. "You went against direct orders," she began, her voice icy. "That boy's family cannot pay. Do you realize what you've done?" Wayne leaned forward, his tone defiant. "I saved a child's life. Isn't that what we're here for?" Dr. Fields smirked, a cruel twist of her lips. "St. Bridget's is a business, Dr. Carter. You've cost us thousands of dollars in resources and put us at legal risk. I have no choice but to." The sound of the phone interrupted her. She glanced at it, annoyance flashing across her face, before answering. Her expression darkened as she listened. Wayne caught fragments of the conversation. "Are you sure? The records don't match?" No, I'll handle it." When she hung up, her composure had cracked, if only slightly. She looked at Wayne, her lips pursed. "It seems there's more to this case than I realized," she said curtly. "But this doesn't change your insubordination. You're suspended, effective immediately." Wayne's world tilted. Suspended? For saving a life? But even as rage and disbelief surged through him, a nagging thought took hold. What does it match? Wayne stormed out of Dr. Fields' office, his mind racing. The polished floors of St. Bridget's gleamed under the bright lights, but the pristine environment only amplified the chaos inside him. Suspended. For saving a boy. He thought back to the child lying on the gurney, his small chest rising and falling in fragile, uneven breaths. How could anyone justify letting him die? He didn't have time to dwell. The boy's parents were still in the waiting room. They deserved to know he had made it through the surgery. Wayne's pace slowed as he approached the couple huddled in plastic chairs, their faces lined with fear and exhaustion. The mother, a thin woman with tear-streaked cheeks, stood as soon as she saw him. "Doctor, is he?" Wayne gave her a small, reassuring smile. "He's stable for now. The surgery went well, but he's not out of danger yet. We'll need to monitor him closely." Her hands flew to her mouth as she sobbed with relief. The father, a wiry man in oil-stained coveralls, stood as well, nodding vigorously. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick. "Thank you for saving our boy. We didn't know what to do." We couldn't," he trailed off, the weight of his inability to pay hanging unspoken between them. "You don't have to thank me," Wayne said firmly. "Your son's life matters, no matter what anyone says." The mother reached out, gripping Wayne's hand. "God bless you," she whispered. But as Wayne turned to leave, a hospital security guard approached him, stiff and expressionless. "Dr. Carter," he said, avoiding eye contact. "You're required to leave the premises immediately." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. Suspended meant he couldn't even check on his own patient. "Seriously?" Wayne snapped. "I just performed a surgery. That boy is in critical condition." The guard shifted uncomfortably. "Orders from Dr. Fields. I'm just following protocol." Wayne looked back at the parents, their expressions shifting from gratitude to confusion. He didn't want to make a scene, so he nodded curtly. "Fine. But someone better take care of that kid." As he walked away, he felt the boy's survival slip further out of his control. Wayne sat in his apartment that evening, staring at the piano in the corner. He couldn't bring himself to play. Instead, he replayed the events of the day, trying to make sense of what Dr. Field had said. Something about records not matching. What did that mean? His phone buzzed on the coffee table, jolting him out of his thoughts. It was a text from Amanda, a senior nurse who had worked with him during the surgery. "I overheard Fields talking to the hospital board. The boy's family might not be who they say they are. Call me." Wayne frowned. He immediately dialed her number, and Amanda picked up after the first ring. "What's going on?" Wayne asked, his voice low. "I don't know all the details," Amanda replied, her tone anxious. "But I checked the hospital's records before they locked me out of the system. The boy's family isn't listed anywhere in our patient database, and there's no record of them in billing either." "That's impossible," Wayne said. "I spoke to them myself." "I thought the same thing," Amanda said. "But then I dug deeper. Guess what I found?" Wayne's grip tightened on the phone. "What?" "A flagged note under the boy's file. It wasn't signed, but it said something about sensitive interests and immediate dismissal of non-compliant staff." Wayne's stomach churned. "What does that mean?" "I'm not sure," Amanda said. "But it sounds like someone doesn't want us looking into this kid's case. Be careful, Wayne. You've already made yourself a target." The next day, Wayne couldn't shake Amanda's warning. Suspended or not, he needed answers. He drove back to the hospital, parking down the street to avoid drawing attention. Inside, he spotted Amanda in the cafeteria. She slipped him a folder under the table, her eyes darting nervously around the room. "I copied what I could before they locked me out," she whispered. "If anyone asks, you didn't get this from me." Wayne flipped through the folder, his pulse quickening. The boy's name, Elias Rivera, was written at the top, but attached to his file were documents Wayne didn't expect: financial reports, contracts, and a list of donations to St. Brigid's from a mysterious corporate entity. One name stood out repeatedly: Trident Pharmaceuticals. Wayne's blood ran cold. Trident was one of the hospital's largest donors, and their influence was no secret. They'd been under scrutiny before for unethical practices, refusing life-saving drugs to low-income patients and inflating prices. He looked up at Amanda. "Why would Trident care about this boy?" "I don't know," Amanda said. "But I'm guessing it's the same reason the hospital administration wants you gone." Before Wayne could respond, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. Hesitating, he answered. "Dr. Carter," a deep voice said on the other end. "You don't know me, but we need to meet. There's something you should see about Elias Rivera." "Who is this?" Wayne demanded. "I'm someone who knows what's really going on at St. Brigid's. And if you care about that boy, you'll come to the corner of 8th and Main tonight. Alone." The line went dead. Wayne's heart pounded. Whoever this was, they had just pulled him deeper into a web he didn't fully understand. And he had no choice but to follow the thread. Wayne parked his car near the dimly lit corner of 8th and Main. The street was eerily quiet, save for the hum of a distant neon sign flickering outside a closed diner. He checked his phone. No new messages. No missed calls. The voice on the other end had been cryptic, but something about it felt urgent and genuine. Still, he couldn't shake the paranoia creeping up his spine. He glanced at the shadows, half expecting someone to leap out at him. Then, a figure emerged from the alley. Dr. Carter. The man stepped closer, his hands raised to show he meant no harm. He was older, with salt and pepper hair and a face weathered by years of stress. "Who are you?" Wayne asked, his voice tense. "Call me Dan," the man said. "I used to work in the finance department at St. Bridget's, until I started asking the wrong questions." Wayne narrowed his eyes. "What does this have to do with Elias Rivera?" "Everything," Dan replied. "The boy shouldn't even be alive, and that terrifies them." Dan motioned for Wayne to follow him deeper into the alley. Reluctantly, Wayne complied, his fists clenched in case this was a trap. But Dan merely pulled out a small envelope for his jacket, handing it to him. "Look inside," Dan urged. Wayne opened the envelope, his breath hitching as he scanned its contents. Photos, documents. One in particular made his stomach lurch, a birth certificate with Elias Rivera's name, but the parents listed weren't the couple he'd met at the hospital. Instead, the names belonged to a wealthy executive and his wife, both connected to Trident Pharmaceuticals. "This doesn't make sense," Wayne murmured. "It does if you know the truth," Dan said. "Elias isn't just some random kid. He's the son of Trident's CEO, Richard Dawson." Wayne's mind reeled. Why would they hide that? Why would his own father leave him to die? Dan shook his head. "That's where it gets darker. Trident has been running a secret program, testing experimental treatments on children, most of them from poor families who couldn't fight back. But something went wrong. Elias is proof of it." Wayne stared at him in disbelief. "You're saying they experimented on their own CEO's son?" Dan nodded grimly. "It was supposed to be safe, a PR stunt to prove the treatment worked. But it failed. Elias started showing severe side effects, so they had to make him disappear. That's why the hospital was ordered not to treat him. If he survives, he's a liability." Wayne's hands trembled as he clutched the envelope. Everything about this case, the strange records, the hostility from Dr. Fields, finally clicked into place. "You have to expose them," Dan said, his voice urgent. "You're the only one who can. The hospital won't listen to me, but you. You're already in the fight." Wayne hesitated. Taking on Trident Pharmaceuticals was like declaring war on a giant. They had money, power, and the resources to destroy anyone who got in their way. But as he thought of Elias, lying vulnerable in the ICU, he knew he couldn't walk away. "What happens to Elias if they find out I'm digging into this?" Wayne asked. Dan's expression darkened. "They won't wait for you to finish. They'll pull the plug before you have a chance to stop them." Wayne's jaw tightened. "Then I need to act fast." The next morning, Wayne returned to the hospital under the pretense of collecting his personal belongings. Amanda met him at the staff entrance, slipping him her ID badge. "I'll cover for you," she whispered. "Just don't get caught." Wayne hurried to the records room, scanning through files as quickly as he could. He needed hard evidence, something irrefutable to expose Trident and St. Bridget's complicity. After what felt like an eternity, he found it. A series of emails between Dr. Fields and Trident executives, explicitly ordering the denial of care for Elias and other children in similar situations. One email even included a chilling directive: ensure there are no survivors. Wayne snapped photos of the documents and saved them to a secure drive. His heart pounded as he heard footsteps approaching. He barely had time to close the drawer before a security guard appeared. "Dr. Carter," the guard said, his tone suspicious. "What are you doing here?" Wayne forced a casual smile. "Just grabbing the last of my things." The guard didn't look convinced, but eventually nodded, stepping aside to let him pass. Wayne exhaled in relief, clutching the USB drive in his pocket like a lifeline. That evening, Wayne held a press conference in a small community center. Journalists and local activists filled the room, their curiosity piqued by the cryptic invitations Wayne had sent out. As he stepped up to the podium, he felt a wave of doubt. Was he ready for the storm he was about to unleash? But the image of Elias, of every child Trident had exploited, strengthened his resolve. "My name is Dr. Wayne Carter," he began, his voice steady despite the cameras flashing in his face. "I'm here to expose a grave injustice. For years, Trident Pharmaceuticals has been conducting illegal experiments on children, with the full knowledge and cooperation of St. Bridget's Hospital. And now they're trying to cover it up. He displayed the documents on a projector, detailing the corruption and cruelty in stark clarity. Gasps rippled through the crowd as he revealed the extent of the conspiracy. But as Wayne finished his presentation, a commotion erupted at the back of the room. Several men in suits pushed their way through, accompanied by police officers. Dr. Carter, one of the men, said, his voice cold, "You're under arrest for theft and unauthorized access to hospital property." The crowd shouted in protest, but Wayne raised his hands in surrender. He had anticipated this. As the officers cuffed him, he shouted over the chaos, "The truth is out now. You can't silence it. Elias Rivera deserves justice." In the holding cell that night, Wayne sat alone, his resolve unbroken. He knew Trident would fight back, but he also knew the evidence was already circulating online, thanks to Amanda and Dan. His phone call with his lawyer was interrupted by the guard. "You've got a visitor," the man said gruffly. Wayne looked up, startled, as the door opened. Standing there was the boy's mother, her face illuminated with gratitude and determination. "You're not alone in this," she said. "We'll fight with you." For the first time in days, Wayne allowed himself a faint smile. Wayne awoke the next morning in the dim holding cell, the ache of exhaustion pressing into his bones. He wasn't sure how long he'd slept, if at all. His lawyer hadn't returned yet, and his mind churned with the implications of what he'd exposed. He leaned against the cold wall, closing his eyes, when the sound of boots echoed down the hallway. A guard approached, unlocking the cell door. "Carter," he grunted. "You're being released." Wayne blinked. "What? On whose authority?" The guard didn't answer, stepping aside to reveal Amanda standing behind him, her eyes blazing with determination. "They couldn't hold you," she said, handing him a folder. "The court ruled there wasn't enough evidence to charge you. Besides, you've got the public on your side now." Wayne frowned, flipping open the folder. Inside were printed screenshots of social media posts, news articles, and public statements condemning Trident Pharmaceuticals and St. Bridget's Hospital. Amanda had leaked the evidence while he was in custody, and the backlash was swift and fierce. "They're calling it #JusticeForElias," Amanda said with a small smile. "The story's gone viral. People are demanding answers." Wayne felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. "This isn't over," he said. "Trident won't back down. If anything, they'll double down on their cover-up." Amanda nodded. "That's why we need more than just public outrage. We need a legal case strong enough to bring him down for good." Wayne's next stop was the hospital, where Elias's condition remained critical. Despite the media frenzy, the boy's care was still at risk. As Wayne entered the ICU, he found the boy's parents at his bedside. The mother looked up, her eyes tired but resolute. "They told us we have to transfer him," she said, "that they can't justify keeping him here anymore." Wayne's blood boiled. "They're trying to erase him," he muttered. Just then, Dr. Fields entered the room, her expression tight. "Dr. Carter," she said sharply, "you shouldn't be here. And this boy needs to be moved to a facility equipped to handle his care." Wayne stepped forward, his voice steady but firm. "We both know that's not what this is about. You're following orders from Trident, and I won't let you endanger this child any further." Dr. Fields' eyes narrowed. "You're playing a dangerous game, Carter. Walk away while you still can." Wayne didn't flinch. "I've already lost my job. What else can they take from me? But you still have a choice. Do the right thing." For a brief moment, doubt flickered across Dr. Fields' face, but she turned sharply on her heel and left without another word. Back at his apartment, Wayne gathered his growing team. Amanda, Dan, and a lawyer from a local advocacy group sat around his kitchen table, papers and laptops scattered everywhere. "We have the public on our side," Dan said, "but we need more than outrage. We need someone from inside Trident to come forward." "Easier said than done," Amanda replied. "Anyone working for them knows what's at stake." Wayne leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Then an idea struck him. "There is someone," he said slowly. "Richard Dawson." Amanda stared at him. "The CEO? The man who's orchestrating all of this?" Wayne nodded. "If anyone knows the truth about Elias and what Trident's been doing, it's him. And if we can find a way to reach him." Dan frowned. "Even if you could, why would he help us? He's got too much to lose." Wayne's gaze hardened. "Because Elias isn't just a test subject to him. He's his son. And no matter how far gone Dawson is, that has to mean something." Tracking down Richard Dawson wasn't easy, but with the help of Amanda and Dan, Wayne finally secured a meeting. Dawson agreed, under the condition it remained private. The rendezvous was set at a secluded hotel outside the city. Wayne arrived first, his heart pounding as he waited in the dimly lit lounge. When Dawson entered, he was every bit the corporate powerhouse, tall and posing, with a crisp suit and an air of authority. "Dr. Carter," Dawson said as he sat across from him. "I don't have much time, so let's get to the point. What do you want?" Wayne slid a photo of Elias across the table. "I want you to save your son." Dawson's expression didn't change, but his eyes flickered briefly to the photo before returning to Wayne. "You don't understand the bigger picture here." "Then explain it to me," Wayne pressed. "Explain why you let your son become a pawn in your company's experiments. Explain why you're willing to let him die to protect your bottom line." Dawson leaned back, his face unreadable. "You think this is about money?" Elias was supposed to be the future of medicine. The treatment was meant to cure diseases we've been fighting for decades. But something went wrong. And if the world finds out, it won't just destroy Trident. It'll destroy everything we've worked for. Wayne leaned forward, his voice hard. "You're right. It will destroy Trident. And it should. Because no medical breakthrough is worth the lives of innocent children. Especially not your own sons." For the first time, Dawson's composure cracked. He looked down at the photo, his hand trembling slightly. "What do you want me to do?" he asked quietly. "Come forward," Wayne said. "Expose what Trident has been doing. Protect Elias. You can still make this right." Dawson didn't respond immediately, but the weight of his guilt was visible in his hunched shoulders. 2 days later, a video surfaced online. It was Dawson, seated at his desk, speaking directly to the camera. "My name is Richard Dawson, CEO of Trident Pharmaceuticals," he began. "For years, my company has engaged in unethical practices, experimenting on vulnerable children in the pursuit of profit. My own son, Elias Rivera, became a victim of these experiments. And now, I'm taking full responsibility." The confession sent shockwaves through the media. Protests erupted outside Trident's headquarters, and investigations into the company's practices intensified. But as Wayne watched the broadcast from his apartment, his phone buzzed. It was Amanda. Her voice was frantic. "Wayne, you need to get to the hospital." "No. What's wrong?" Wayne asked, already grabbing his keys. "It's Elias," Amanda said. "He's coding. They're trying to stop us from saving him." Wayne's heart raced as he bolted out the door. The fight wasn't over yet. Wayne's tires screeched to a halt in front of St. Bridget Hospital. He bolted through the sliding doors, his heart hammering as he ignored the startled receptionist calling after him. The ICU was just down the hall. "Dr. Carter, you're not authorized to be here," a security guard shouted, stepping into his path. "I don't have time for this," Wayne barked, shoving past him. He didn't care about the consequences. Elias was running out of time. Bursting into Elias's room, Wayne found Amanda in a standoff with Dr. Fields. The head administrator stood rigid, her arms crossed, while 2 nurses hovered nervously by the boy's bedside. "What's going on?" Wayne demanded. Dr. Fields turned to him, her face a mask of cold disdain. "Dr. Carter, you've been warned. This child is being transferred. His case is no longer your concern." "Transferred where?" Wayne shot back. "To a morgue? We both know he won't survive a move in his condition." "He's coding." One of the nurses interrupted. The heart monitor let out a piercing alarm, and Elias's small frame convulsed on the bed. "Get out of my way," Wayne snapped, rushing to Elias's side. "Stop him," Dr. Fields ordered, but Amanda stepped between Wayne and the administrator, blocking her path. "This is on you, Margaret," Amanda said, her voice shaking. "If you let him die, it's murder." Wayne focused on the boy. "Adrenaline now," he barked to one of the hesitant nurses. "BP dropping fast," the other nurse reported. Wayne worked quickly, his hands steady as he intubated Elias and administered the drug. The boy's body shuddered, then stilled. "Come on, kid," Wayne murmured. The heart monitor skipped, then resumed its rhythm, slow but steady. "He's stabilizing," Amanda said, her voice tinged with relief. Dr. Fields's face was ashen. She glanced at the door, where 2 men in suits, likely Trident representatives, watched with grim expressions. "This isn't over," she muttered, storming out. Amanda leaned against the wall, her adrenaline fading. That was too close, she said softly. Wayne nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. But he's alive. For now. One of the nurses approached. Dr. Carter, I'm with you. If you need help keeping him safe, I'll stay. Wayne gave her a grateful nod. We're not out of the woods yet. They'll come back, and next time, they won't wait for permission. Amanda's phone buzzed. She checked it and swore under her breath. The media's already here. Fields probably called them to spin this against us. Wayne hesitated, then squared his shoulders. Good. Let them come. It's time everyone sees what's really happening. By the time the press flooded into the hospital, Wayne was ready. Standing at the entrance of the ICU, he addressed the crowd of reporters and cameras. My name is Dr. Wayne Carter, he began, his voice firm. Behind these doors is Elias Rivera, a boy who almost died because of corporate greed and systemic corruption. But thanks to a dedicated team of healthcare workers, he has a chance to survive. I'm here today to tell you the truth about what's been happening at St. Brigid's Hospital and Trident Pharmaceuticals. He laid out the evidence he and Amanda had gathered, the illegal experiments, the targeted denial of care, and the cover-up orchestrated by hospital administrators. Healthcare is a right, not a privilege, Wayne said, his voice rising with passion. No child should have to fight for their life because they can't afford it. And no company should profit from the suffering of the most vulnerable. The crowd erupted with questions, but Wayne held his ground, determined to keep the focus on Elias and the systemic issues. That evening, news stations across the country aired Wayne's speech alongside Dawson's confession. Trident's stock plummeted, and public outrage swelled. Protesters gathered outside the hospital, demanding accountability. Inside, Wayne stayed by Elias's bedside, watching as the boy's condition slowly improved. Amanda entered, carrying a tray of coffee. You're a hero, you know, she said, handing him a cup. Wayne shook his head. I'm just doing what's right. The real hero is that kid for surviving all of this. Amanda sat beside him. Trident's board is meeting tomorrow. There's talk of criminal charges. Fields is probably packing her bags as we speak. Good, Wayne said. But it's not enough. We need real change, not just a scapegoat. Amanda nodded. Then we keep fighting. As the night wore on, Wayne dozed off in the chair beside Elias. He was jolted awake by the sound of his phone vibrating. Groggily, he answered. Dr. Carter, a familiar voice said. It was Dan, we've got a problem. I just intercepted an internal memo from Trident. They're planning something big to shift the narrative. What kind of something? Wayne asked, his pulse quickening. A media blitz, lawsuits, maybe even a smear campaign against you, Dan said. They're not going down without a fight. Wayne clenched his jaw, his resolve hardening. Then neither am I. The next morning, Wayne sat at the small diner across from Amanda and Dan, the scent of burnt coffee mingling with the tension in the air. Dan slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was a breaking news headline. Disgraced surgeon Wayne Carter accused of data theft and medical malpractice. Wayne frowned, scrolling through the article. It was littered with accusations, misconduct in previous surgeries, fabricated patient testimonies, and claims that his actions had jeopardized hospital staff. This is a smear campaign, Amanda said, slamming her hand on the table. They're trying to discredit you to distract from the truth. Wayne shook his head. It won't work. The evidence is out there. People won't believe this. Dan hesitated. Wayne, not everyone is rational. They got PR teams spinning this narrative. If we don't respond fast, the public will start questioning everything. Wayne leaned back, his jaw tight. Then we hit back harder. Let's focus on Elias. He's the proof they can't refute. That afternoon, Wayne and his growing team met with lawyers and activists at a small nonprofit legal office. The mood was somber, but determined. We filed a motion to subpoena Trident's internal documents, the lead attorney explained. But they're pushing back, claiming proprietary protection. It'll take time to get a ruling. Elias doesn't have time, Wayne said. What about whistleblowers? Anyone else from Trident willing to come forward? Dan cleared his throat. I've been working on that. One of their senior scientists, Dr. Evelyn Marsh, has agreed to meet with us. She's the one who oversaw Elias's initial treatment. Wayne's eyes lit up. When can we talk to her? She's being careful, Dan replied. She doesn't want to risk her family's safety. But she agreed to meet tonight at the old library downtown. Amanda raised an eyebrow. Sounds risky. Wayne nodded. It always is. The library was eerily quiet when Wayne arrived. Its grand halls filled with dusty shelves and dim, flickering lights. He spotted Dr. Marsh in a back corner, a petite woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair tied tightly into a bun. Her eyes darted nervously as Wayne approached. "You're Dr. Carter," she asked, her voice hushed. Wayne nodded. "And you're the one who can help us stop this." Dr. Marsh sighed, running a hand through her hair. "You don't know what you're asking. Trident isn't just a company, they're a machine. They destroy anything in their way. I've seen it happen." "Then why are you here?" Wayne pressed. She pulled a flash drive from her pocket, setting it on the table between them. "Because what they're doing is wrong. That boy, Elias, was part of an experimental gene therapy project. They rushed the trials, ignored red flags, and falsified data to get FDA approval. And now they're trying to bury the evidence." Wayne picked up the drive, his hands steady despite the weight of her words. "What's on here?" "Everything," she said. "Emails, lab reports, test results. It's enough to bring Trident down. But if they find out I gave this to you—" "They won't," Wayne assured her. "We'll protect you." Marsh shook her head, a sad smile on her lips. "No one can protect me from them. Just promise me you'll use this to make it right." Wayne met her gaze. "I promise." The next morning, Wayne and his team reviewed the contents of the flash drive. It was a goldmine, proof of falsified reports, unethical testing, and even direct orders from top executives to suppress adverse results. "This is it," Amanda said, her voice trembling with excitement. "This will blow their case wide open." Wayne nodded. "We'll release it to the media tonight. But first, we need to make sure Elias is safe." At that moment, Dan's phone buzzed. His face paled as he read the message. "We've got a problem," he said. "Elias's room was just cleared out. He's gone." Wayne froze. "What do you mean, gone?" "They moved him to another facility," Dan said. "I tried calling the hospital, but no one will tell me where he is." Wayne's blood ran cold. This wasn't a transfer, it was an abduction. Wayne and Amanda tracked Elias to a private clinic on the outskirts of town, owned by a Trident subsidiary. Posing as medical personnel, they managed to gain access to the building. Inside, they found Elias in a sterile, windowless room, hooked up to machines that beeped ominously. His small frame looked even frilier than before. "We need to move him now," Wayne whispered. As they prepared to disconnect him, the door burst open and 2 Trident security guards entered. "Step away from the patient," one barked, reaching for his weapon. Wayne stepped forward, his hands raised. "You're making a mistake. This boy's life is on the line. If you stop me, you'll be complicit in murder." The guards hesitated, exchanging a glance. The weight of the public backlash was already growing, and neither seemed eager to be the face of it. "You have 2 minutes," one finally said, stepping aside. Wayne and Amanda worked quickly, wheeling Elias out to a waiting van. They drove straight to a public hospital, where media crews had already gathered. As Wayne carried Elias into the hospital, cameras captured every moment. Reporters shouted questions, but Wayne ignored them, his focus solely on getting the boy to safety. Inside, a team of doctors took over, stabilizing Elias and placing him in the ICU under heavy security. Outside, Wayne addressed the press one final time. "This is what Trident Pharmaceuticals and St. Bridget's Hospital try to hide. But no more. Elias Rivera deserves justice, and so do all the children they've hurt. Today marks the beginning of the end for their corruption." 2 weeks later, Wayne stood outside the courthouse, preparing to testify in the case against Trident. The company's executives had been indicted, and Dr. Fields had fled the country. But as Wayne stepped inside, his phone buzzed with a text. "Be careful, Dr. Carter. Some truths are more dangerous than you know." Wayne looked around, the weight of the warning settling over him. The fight wasn't over yet. The courtroom buzzed with quiet anticipation as Wayne entered, the weight of months of conflict pressing down on him. Rows of spectators filled the gallery, reporters, activists, Elias's family, and even some of Wayne's former colleagues. At the front, the prosecution team prepared to present the damning evidence that Wayne and his allies had risked everything to uncover. Across the aisle sat the defendants, Trident executives, hospital administrators, and lawyers in tailored suits. Their expressions were cold and unflinching, but the tension in their postures betrayed their unease. Wayne took his seat beside Amanda and Dan, who had come to support him. Amanda squeezed his hand. "This is it," she whispered. "You've done everything you can. Now it's up to the court." Wayne nodded, though his nerves were raw. This wasn't just about bringing Trident down. It was about Elias and the countless other children who had suffered because of greed and corruption. The prosecution laid out its case with precision, calling expert witnesses and presenting the documents from Dr. Marsh's flash drive. Emails, internal memos, and falsified reports painted a clear picture of Trident's systematic exploitation. Wayne was called to the stand to testify. He recounted everything: the night Elias was brought into the ER, the hospital's refusal to treat him, and the life-saving surgery that led to Wayne's suspension. "What motivated you to defy your superiors, Dr. Carter?" the prosecutor asked. Wayne's voice was steady but emotional. "Because I became a doctor to save lives, not to protect profits. Letting Elias die wasn't just unethical, it was inhuman." The defense tried to discredit him, pointing to the smear campaign that painted him as reckless and insubordinate. But Wayne held firm, countering their claims with evidence and unwavering conviction. "I didn't take an oath to follow orders," Wayne said during cross-examination. "I took an oath to do no harm. And that's what I did." After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated. The wait was agonizing. Wayne sat with Amanda, Dan, and Elias's family in a small conference room, the air heavy with tension. Finally, the verdict was announced. "We find the defendants guilty on all charges." The courtroom erupted in applause and tears. Wayne felt a surge of relief and pride as justice was served. Trident Pharmaceuticals was ordered to pay billions in fines and restitution to victims, and its executives faced prison sentences. Elias's family embraced Wayne, their gratitude overwhelming. "You saved him," Elias's mother said, her voice choked with emotion. "And so many others." Months later, Wayne stood outside a modest clinic in a working-class neighborhood. The sign above the door read, "Rivera Free Clinic, in memory of all who deserve a chance." Amanda joined him, holding a stack of patient intake forms. "We're fully booked for the week," she said with a smile. "Ready to get to work?" Wayne nodded, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The fight with Trident had taken its toll, but it had also given him a renewed purpose. Inside, Elias sat in the waiting room, now healthier and more vibrant than anyone had thought possible. He waved at Wayne, who smiled back. As Wayne stepped into the clinic, he felt the weight of the past lift slightly. There were still battles to fight, but for now, there was hope. Months after the clinic opened, a letter from Wayne was published in a major medical journal. It read, "To my fellow healthcare professionals and the world at large, we stand at crossroads where the line between medicine and business has blurred. I learned this the hard way, but the lesson is clear. Lives are not commodities, and healthcare should never be a privilege reserved for the wealthy." Elias Rivera was a victim of a system that failed him, but he also became a symbol of what we can achieve when we choose compassion over convenience, humanity over profit. I urge you all to remember why we entered this field: to heal, to serve, and to stand for those who cannot stand for themselves. The fight is far from over, but together we can create a future where no child is left behind. Let us never forget that every life is worth saving. Sincerely, Dr. Wayne Carter. As Wayne finished his rounds at the clinic, he paused to watch Elias kicking a soccer ball outside with other children. The boy laughed, his joy a testament to resilience and the power of one act of courage. Wayne smiled, a quiet satisfaction settling over him. The world wasn't perfect, but it was better for what they'd done. And for now, that was enough.